unmuted now. Hakuna camera?
Hello, camera.
So they can see you now.
No, here. Hello. Hello.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. It's clear.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you.
But I can't see you.
Well, I'm trying to make sure that the communication flows very well. So.
It came from your side. We did all the necessary to do. And then, okay, I can see you now, madam. I can see you. Can you see me?
Good evening, Ma. You're welcome
Hello?
to the call.
Lillian, thank you.
Yes.
Good evening to all of you that are watching me now.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening from Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So can we kindly mute our line so that we can go live now? If everyone can hear me. Welcome on the call, sir.
Mr. Chairman Barde.
Yes, this is Chirnan Barde, sir.
Barde, it's a pleasure meeting you, but I'm not seeing you. I'm only hearing your voice, sir.
I can show you myself for a minute, sir.
Okay, please let me see. Okay, I can see you now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
So we're going live. If you can just kindly mute your mics, we can go live now.
Okay, my mic is okay.
Yes,
if it is, what do you say?
You have to mute it just before we start so that we can start the program.
Okay, thank you. We'll mute it.
All right, thank you. All right, good evening to our participants in West and Central Africa. And good day to our international participants joining us from across the globe. On behalf of ACIOE Associates, the Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce, and the Nigeria Strategy Support Program of the International Food Policy Research Institute, I would like to welcome you to the first part of our agricultural webinar series with the theme, Agricultural Supply Chain Situational Analysis and Post-Pandemic Recovery Plans. This session will focus on the national preparedness and the role of the private sector. Before we get going with proceedings, let us briefly introduce the partners who have made this epoch event possible. ACIOE Associates is an advisory services firm providing solutions in strategy, government relations, regulatory affairs, economic development, advocacy, investment facilitation, and policy analysis. Our team provides advisory services on critical sectors, including health, agriculture, and social impact, and government relations. We have supported governments, both federal and subnational, development partners, organizations around sustainable solutions to the challenging economic, political, and developmental issues within the countries we operate. As part of our diverse portfolio in the agricultural sector, we have helped a global nonprofit to assess policy blockages and develop recommendations in the tomato and cassava value chains in Nigeria. We have supported a global development company to identify constraints impacting doing business in the agricultural space in Nigeria, just to mention a few. As part of our COVID-19 initiative,
connected. Smartphone disconnected.
As part of our COVID-19 initiative to assuage agricultural sector challenges, we are actively providing regular updates for existing clients in the COVID-19 impact and recovery efforts on specific agricultural programs at the federal and subnational levels. We have taken the fore in providing leadership on COVID-19 pandemic effects and recovery steps. We have published the first part of our Beyond COVID-19 Agricultural Insights report, which highlights homegrown innovations that can be adopted for scale to deal with food security and reliance, with other publications from the series underway shortly. And of course, we are facilitating webinars such as this on the key lessons and recovery efforts considering the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our core partners for this webinar are the USAID Nigeria-funded Feed the Future Nigeria Agricultural Policy Project, which is implemented by the Michigan State University and the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI Nigeria, Support Strategy Program, that is the IFPRI NSSP. It is designed to address the need for policy research and capacity building and to ensure that Nigerian institutions are equipped to respond effectively and in a timely manner to the increasing capacity, knowledge, and information needs of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, and also the State Ministries of Agriculture and Natural Resources. IFPRI NSSP works closely with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development to strengthen evidence-based policymaking in Nigeria in the areas of rural and agricultural development. So the agenda for our discussion today, the panel discussion will focus on recovery efforts and scaling up resilience in the agricultural sector. This is because it is becoming increasingly clear that the lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic has raised a major concern about the food supply chain in Nigeria. Anticipated impacts include increases in cost of food, commodities, challenges with access to nutritious foods, and general food security concerns, as well as threats to the agricultural sector's contribution to the nation's GDP. The objectives of the panel discussion will include to assess the current situation and identification of depth of impact of the pandemic on value chains, to share insights on recovery efforts from a stakeholder's perspective, and to discuss government incentives and targeted value chain initiatives. Details of the timelines, order of activities, and distinguished panelists are shared on the screen as we speak. We trust that at the end of the webinar, you will all leave more informed about the high-level insights and cross-sectoral recovery plans across the agricultural landscape in Nigeria. I will now hand you over to our partners from the Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce to set the tone for the webinar and usher in our esteemed delegates for speaking. Thank you and God bless.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Matthew, can hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Barde, for your concise introduction to this very important webinar, the first of the series that we'll be having in the next couple of weeks. I want to welcome everybody, starting with the Honorable Commissioner of Agriculture, represented by Alhaji Zubairu Abdullahi, and we have the Honorable Commissioner of Agriculture from Ogun State, Dr. Dedina, Ndidi Uneli from Sahel, IFPRI representatives, Hyacinth and Dr. Kwaw. We have Dr. Manzo as well, Dr. Manzo Maigari, who is the Director General of Nigerian Agribusiness Group, and a host of others that are here. Time enough permit me, we want to say that we welcome everybody, all the stakeholders here, implementing partners and so forth, to this very important webinar event. I believe that we're all too aware that now that Nigeria has the largest economy. Well, let me introduce myself again. Chirnan had done that. My name is Matthew Obogbaimhe. I'm the current chairman, Nigeria American Chamber of Commerce, Kaduna State, representing the northern part of the country. Again, I want to say that we believe that Nigeria has the largest economy in Africa, which presently places us in an unenviable position where other economies are looking pointedly at us to take the lead, as it were, to see the critical steps we take in the midst of this very present danger we face by way of COVID-19, which has disrupted global economies, supply chains, etc., etc. The burning topic, like Chirnan just mentioned, today is situational analysis and recovery efforts to mitigate present agricultural value chains, supply chains, and challenges. Just yesterday, I read about the launch by the Vice President of Nigeria that they were launching a 200,000 capacity storage facility of yams in Benue State. And he also said that post-harvest losses in Nigeria is becoming a thing of the past. I think Nigeria consumes about 2 to 3 million tons of yams from my little survey, which I did recently, yearly, while a significant amount also goes to waste. Post-harvest losses has been a very big problem in Nigeria, especially now that we have this pandemic that is ravaging the whole world and disrupting supply chains. We have a very big hole right there. Not only in yams, farming and storages, but all the produce which Nigeria produces. It's giving us a lot of problems in terms of this COVID-19 that has happened. Without citing so many examples, I also just want to mention that this COVID-19 has brought a lot of enormous challenges to our members. We have a business membership organization with a members base of over 300 businessmen and women. A lot of them are, concerned in the agricultural space. And just one of them who has a poultry in Kaduna with over 70,000 beds, produces eggs. He was complaining bitterly how, even though they were having problems with delivery to Kaduna State for their school feeding program, that has stalled significantly. But right now, because of supply chain challenges, they're having to look beyond Nigerian shores to have deliveries of eggs so that they don't have an egg glut that destroys the eggs because the chicken just continue to produce and they can't stop them from producing. And so they're looking for that supply chains outside of Nigeria because of the problems that they have. So there are people coming in from Niger and other places elsewhere where they have made contacts to ensure that the deliveries or the production of their eggs, find ways, of being sold so that they mitigate some of their losses that they are presently faced with. I was also listening to a report recently where the World Food Program was saying that $180 million is being looked for as intervention fund to avert hunger and starvation in the northeast of the country. We know that the northeast of the country has experienced so much problems in recent past and has been worsened by the COVID-19 that has come upon us suddenly without any preparation on ground. And the supply chains that have been disrupted massively has further exacerbated that problem. And we see that if we don't find a solution very, very soon, Nigeria as a whole will experience a massive, hunger situation and starvation that probably will lead the country into a recession. That has already been discussed in so many places that we're talking about recession. It might even go into a depression. But I think that Nigeria, which is strategically placed and has been leading the way, in ensuring that, the economy of Nigeria still continue to rebound, will be able to surmount these problems. That said, we want to thank all the excellencies that are here. I know we're expecting His Excellency Senator Bagodo from Kebbi State. I'm not aware if he has come on board yet. We have His Excellency, former Governor of Nasarawa State, Dr. Abdullahi Adamu, the present Senate Chair Committee on Agriculture at the Senate Chambers, who is supposed to join us. So I want to say that we are faced with serious problems in the agricultural space. There is nobody who does not eat food. And if you have a disruption in the agricultural supply chain, that's going to affect, over 200 million people that we have in the country at the moment. And so it is my pleasure to welcome all the resource persons, participants, and speakers, panelists who will help us digest this topic that we are dealing with. I know recently we're talking about having our members tell us how they are being, how they are being affected by, the COVID-19. I received so many information regarding the present status that they face, where, their businesses are collapsing. They can't pay salaries because they can't move their businesses from one point to the other, especially as it concerns deliveries and supplies. And so they are needing interventions from the government. And we were able to link a number of them to NICC, but as I speak, over a month has passed. They've not been able to receive the cover from NICC. So I'm happy that we have a representative from the Central Bank of Nigeria to tell us what they are doing. In all of this, we believe that when all the panelists have made their presentations, our ultimate goal is to see that every sector that the panelists here represent be able to have some synergy where they're able to monitor in real time how they're able to synergize to see that whatever input they make is able, to be captured, and see that they're able to we are making progress in the way that we are going. So once again, I welcome everybody, all the panelists, implementing partners, stakeholders, and I will hand over the microphone, as it were, to Dr. Kwaw to give us his report, situational analysis going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I will be presenting a situation analysis of the challenges facing the agriculture sector. I have some presentation slides that will be going up shortly, and then I'll proceed with the body of the presentation. So I'm going to wait for the moderator to put those slides up in a minute. Thank you.
Dr. Kwaw, I think I was doing my introduction, but I wasn't looking completely at my screen. I think His Excellency Senator Abubakar Bagudu, the Executive Governor of Kebbi State, has joined us. His Excellency,
good afternoon, everyone.
Senator Governor, you're welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear us.
Yes, I can. I believe other members can hear you too. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, distinguished Senator.
Earlier on, the last speaker indicated that Senator Abdullah Adamu was supposed to join. I'm actually standing in for him because he has some very urgent issues to attend to. So Senator Ali Sabi is my name, a member of the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Deputy Chief Whip of the Senate. I'm standing in for Senator Abdullah Adamu. Thank you.
You're most welcome now. Thank you, sir. So, welcome, distinguished Senator. Mr. Kwaw, if you can please share your screen so we can kick on with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, representative of the Senator, Chairman of Senate Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Your Excellency Abubakar Bagudu, Governor of Kebbi State, Your Excellency, former Governor of Nasarawa State, other distinguished guests on the panel, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to you all. We're pleased to see such a high participation in today's event. In this situation analysis of the challenges facing the agriculture sector, I'm going to provide some findings from an assessment of the economic impacts of COVID-19 in Nigeria that we at the International Food Policy Research Institute have undertaken in collaboration with Dr. Victor Obo of the Central Bank of Nigeria. I would like to acknowledge the generous funding support for this analysis provided by USAID through the Feed the Future Nigeria Agricultural Policy Project. Now, Mr. Obogbaimhe has provided a really great tone-setting speech in which he has mentioned a couple of the challenges we are facing: recession and the danger of lost incomes and effects on agriculture. In this situation analysis, I'm going to cover both the broad economic impacts of COVID-19 and the associated policies, but also I'll look at some of the indirect impacts that have fallen on the agricultural sector. I would like to convey two main messages in this presentation. The first is that the health impacts of COVID-19 combined with the policies necessary, of course, in most cases to control the disease, has really exerted and is in fact is continuing to exert significant adverse economic impacts. This is the case whether you measure in terms of overall economic production, if you look at household incomes and poverty levels, which are going up. We know about the global estimates of the global economy that will be contracting for 2020. And here we are looking also at the country level estimates. So wherever we look, we find these broad economic impacts. In our findings, which I'm previewing here, we see that during the 5-week period of the federal government lockdown, the national GDP, national gross domestic product, a measure of economic output, fell by 38%. Now that's the first point about the broad economic impacts. But I would also like us to really look at the fact that the pandemic has also affected specifically agricultural supply systems when you look at the input and the output channels. This is, of course, the topic for our discussion today. It's important to recognize that many of these impacts have come through indirect channels. In other words, although agriculture was exempted from many of the restrictions, we still see indirect channels, indirect impacts, which have had negative outcomes. It's also important to recognize that these negative impacts would have been considerably worse without the bold policy actions to exempt agriculture and to enable farming to proceed during this period, at least to some level. So I'll now describe how we reached the findings that I'm presenting here. Let's start with a timeline of the COVID-19 occurrence in Nigeria, starting from late February, which you can see on your left here in your screen, in late February when the first case was confirmed. And then as these bars are rising up, you are looking at the increasing number of cases. And at the top, we have some text that is describing some of the major policy actions. I want to point out just 2 major events because I presume that for all of us, we have been following the events and we know what has been happening. But the 2 major events that we are included in our analysis is that in late March, as you know, there was a federal government announcement on movement restrictions. Now we know that parts of the economy was locking down even before the announcement, but for this analysis that I'll be showing you, we really consider specifically the guidelines and exemptions from that policy announcement as the main economic shock. And it's mainly seen through the restrictions on economic activity that had to take place. Of course, we know there are also state level lockdown policies, and we have taken some of those into account in our analysis here. So just so as you look at this timeline, recognize that we track the policy shocks from late March when the announcement was made all the way through the 5 weeks into May when the federal policies were relaxed in a phased manner. As I have mentioned, it's important to note that there were exemptions from agriculture with these policies. So mainly we are looking at indirect impacts here. Now to go a little bit in the next couple of slides in the technical detail of what we have done, we used what is called an economy-wide modeling approach that is based on a social accounting matrix, SAM. The SAM is an economy-wide database that captures resource flows from all economic transactions in the economy. And so you can think about sectors such as agriculture broken down into various components like maize production, rice production. You can think about marketing broken down into sale of food, sale of other items. Once you break down into several subsectors, we have here about 300 activities that we are tracking for Nigeria. So we are using the 2018 SAM for Nigeria to calibrate the model that is used in this study. Now, in the next figure, I would like to just emphasize the motivation for using this approach. The SAM multiplier models are ideally suited for measuring short-term impacts or shocks from unanticipated rapid onset shocks to the economy, either the demand or supply side. And you agree with me that COVID-19 is such a shock, right? It was short-term, it was unanticipated, unexpected. And so this model helps us to track the impacts. Now, importantly, if you see the red and green figures here, they enable us to see both direct impacts from restricting an economic activity, but also indirect impacts. And then that flows into the impacts that we see on the economy in terms of incomes, jobs, poverty, and so on. So now going on to our findings as we consider the impact mainly of the 5-week lockdown period. The figure that I'm showing here is showing you the impact on aggregate gross domestic product and its components. The relative terms, that's in terms of percentage impacts, are on the left, and the absolute figures in terms of billions of US dollars are on the right. Now, when you look at this, you can see that the largest losses in the economy, both in absolute and relative terms, are recorded in industry and services. Of course, we know agriculture was exempted, so we'll see a smaller impact. But at the same time, though the losses in agricultural sector are small in absolute terms, if you look on the figure on the right, you'll see the 1.3 billion. This is the estimated impact on agriculture. But in relative terms, on the left, you see that agriculture suffered nearly 14%, 13.8% shortfall in production during the period. So it's quite large when we look at the relative impact. So this is just a presentation of the broad economic impacts across sectors. Now I would like to move on to look at agriculture in particular. When we look at agriculture, we know that primary agricultural activities were excluded from the restrictions, as I've mentioned. But at the same time, the agricultural sector is affected indirectly. And so the estimate that I just showed you, the 13.8%, is from the indirect impacts. And I think that shows that these kinds of unintended effects of the policies shows the importance of using a model framework that will capture inter-industry linkages to get all the effects that are happening. So to better understand the linkages, it is good to think about what we are calling the entire agri-food system. And we would say that most of us know that agriculture accounts for 21% of Nigeria's GDP. When we look at the broad agri-food system, it accounts for much more than that, 32.6%, because we have the primary agriculture, 21%, but we also have things like agro-processing, 4%, food services, and food trade and transport services. Now, when we look at the entire agri-food system, you can see in this figure here that while primary agriculture suffered a 13.8% drop during the period, we can see significant impacts on the food service sector. That's the last bar on the left, 91.4%. And that's because, of course, we know that there was a near total shutdown of hotels and restaurant activities during the period. So we can see, if we think about agriculture, not only as primary agriculture, but we think about the marketing side and the entire value chain, the entire agri-food system, that there have indeed been shocks to the system that farmers and producers will face. Let me go on to more of a breakdown of the agri-food system GDP losses by impact channel. So the idea here is to try to understand, where are these impacts coming from? We know there are impacts, where is it coming from? And here you can see what I was just describing in the previous slide. On the first two bars, you can see closing non-essential wholesale retail trade, closing hotels, bars, and restaurants. And looking at these as impact channels, if you combine these two alone, we can see that the suspension of non-essential wholesale and retail trade and the closure of hotels, restaurants, and so on jointly account for over 60% of the losses that we see in ag GDP over the period. So despite the small size of the food service sector itself, it has significant linkages to other subsectors within the agri-food system. And this explains the overall large impact that we are seeing. And then, as expected, with the exception of closure of non-essential manufacturing firms, most other policy measures have a limited impact on agri-food system GDP. But we do see that food systems are fragile and are affected by the policies that have been in place so far. We can also look at breaking down some of the impacts by subsector of agriculture. And here, as you will see, just to highlight a few areas, root crops, for example, which are the largest food group in Nigeria, remain relatively lightly affected compared to, say, export crops, which you can see there in the middle, sugarcane, beverage, traditional export crops, which we would expect because there's falling global demand. And so these areas are going to experience much more of an impact. This type of breakdown can help us as we think about more targeted policies and can help policymakers to address supply chain challenges in agriculture going forward. So we've seen two different types of breakdown that helps us to look at the more disaggregated impacts in the agriculture sector. Now, in conclusion, I would like to leave you with some results from our analysis, which are of more forward-looking scenarios from the model. We have looked at different ways of easing and recovery, whether a fast, gradual, or really gradual easing with slow recovery, and we can see here the different results. What I would like to point out is that even with a fast recovery, it is important to recognize that there will be losses from COVID-19 that will require government policies to address. I think some of what we have seen so far has already shown us the importance of tailored policies for agriculture, because then we can minimize the impacts. And we hope that going forward that we can do some more of these types of analysis to guide decision making. So thank you very much for this opportunity to provide a situation analysis. I'm sure there will be several other comments that can come in to help us to get a much better picture. Here I've just looked at our modeling results, but we'll look forward to a discussion and comments towards the end. Thank you so much.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Dr. Andam, for the presentation on the situational report. My name is Lillian Onyebulam. I'm moderating the technical session. But before I start, I'd like to take a moment to warmly welcome His Excellency, the distinguished governor of Kebbi State, and His Excellency, the Senator, the distinguished Senator,
Sabi Abdullahi, Dr. Aliyu.
Yeah, the distinguished Senator, Dr. Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi. You're very warmly welcome to this session. We'd like to also welcome our very distinguished guests on this panel. We would like to start with His Excellency, the Governor of Kebbi State, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, with a presentation regarding reforms, policies, and plans to ensure recovery of agricultural supply chains post-COVID-19 pandemic. We have heard a lot of case studies and the report from the situational report, what is happening. Can we really recover from the effects of this pandemic? What can we do? Or what are we planning to do? What have we been doing to support the recovery agenda and build resilience along the agricultural supply chain? Your Excellency, sir, please, you have the floor now.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. The organizers, the single Senator Aliyu Sabi, representative of the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, and my friend Matthew of the Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce, and permit me for not acknowledging everyone in person, but to thank everyone, and particularly the brilliant situational analysis by Dr. Andam. I guess my presentation has been prepared and forwarded. I don't know whether you can you please bring it up? Hello?
Yes, please. Chirnan, could you put up the presentation?
Good, thank you. I think it's on.
Yes.
Thank you very much once more. And having had Dr. Andam, I think, hello?
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please. This session, you have 5 minutes to just do. a summary.
5 minutes.
Yes, sir. We'll be going
Okay.
over questions later on.
Okay, thank you. So quickly to, like I said, to thank Dr. Andam because he has done most of it, that the COVID pandemic is unprecedented. So in terms of its relationship with agriculture, I don't think anything compares to it in recent memory. However, we have supply disruptions that are localized, tsunamis, environmental issues, which always offer a glimpse about what responses can be done. I will restrict myself to Kebbi State just to illustrate, while acknowledging the commendable effort of the federal government under the able leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, who have provided a lot of support to states and commodity groups and financing from the central bank in order to limit the disruptions and reduction in production that is likely to be caused by the COVID pandemic. In Kebbi State, we responded by doing more of what we have been doing, to maintain, in spite of limited revenues, to still maintain the public spending in agriculture to at least 10% of the state's budget, and to continue to mobilize private investment. And that has been on the increase, both in primary production, marketing, and processing. We are lucky in Kebbi State that the anthropological structure of our society is that many people in the agricultural value chain, farmers, animal husbandry participants, and fishing communities are living in villages near the points of activity. So it provides a unique approach in terms of, rather than isolating and locking down people in their homes, they are encouraged to go to their activities because that provides a very manageable and more productive social distancing. And I think that has helped us tremendously. And we in Kebbi have benefited, apart from the private sector, from partnerships. I must say again, a big thank you to Pete the Teacher, Michigan State University, USADF, the Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce, who helped midwife a $1 million program that is ongoing in Kebbi State between United States Development Agency for Development in Africa. And also recently, the identified groups that have been benefiting from that program have even benefited from $5,000 each, courtesy of the United States USAID support to ventures to maintain production. So that we also equally have partnership with World Fish that is helping us maintain and do better in our fisheries. And so in terms of, even though we have disruptions about inputs, understandably, because these inputs, most of them are produced outside the state, but there has been compensatory response by mobilizing more people to participate, and we are seeing minimal reduction in production. However, we are witnessing reduced demand for some of the particularly perishable vegetable items like onions, where the prices are coming down significantly. In staple crops, the prices have held up significantly, and there's even been a slight increase in prices, which is providing motivation to continue and sustain production. The disruptions that affected input has been responded to by the federal government. The Presidential Fertilizer Initiative energized more to the extent that there is no shortage in fertilizer, and the expanding of financing opportunities by the central bank and by a number of federal government projects, and but by what we are also doing in state is putting more resources into primary producers. However, the impact of the pandemic has slowed down some of the major projects that are ongoing in the state, particularly a major tomato processing facility, which will be certainly among the biggest in Africa when it is commissioned. We were due to commission this facility by Agri-Food of Spain in May, but of course the pandemic have slowed down, and certainly the processed output might also be affected by the lower demands that are coming as a result of closure of hotels, homes, businesses, and even the challenge of moving items from factory to market.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
But
you for that
again,
insight.
like I said, the pandemic presents an unprecedented opportunity for Nigeria to do much more because more than anything else, this is the most striking warning that we have had that our food supply better be localized. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, sir.
Thank you.
We would like to hear from Alhaji Zubairu Abdullahi, the Director of Policy Planning in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. He's representing the Minister of Agriculture, Alhaji Sabo Nanono. Please, would you share with us some insights on the reforms at the ministry and their plans to ensure recovery of the agricultural supply chain within the pandemic and then post-pandemic? Thank you, sir. You have the floor. Chirnan, would you put up his presentation if he has one? Hello. Hello, sir. Are you there? Hello. Okay. We'll go over to the next guest on the panel. The distinguished Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, Deputy Majority Whip Member, Senate Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development. Your Excellency, sir, please, would you share with us what is happening in the legislation fronts and the policies enabling innovation to promote recovery plans in the agricultural sector? You have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you very much. First, let me say I was drafted in to stand in for the chairman, for he has to be unavoidably absent. And so I don't have any formal presentation that I prepared. But based on the brief and what you've just said, I think I would like to make some few, give some few responses and perhaps one or two remarks. In truth, yes, like the situation analysis did prove, and the submission by His Excellency, distinguished Senator, Abubakar Bagudu, the governor of Kebbi State. It is obvious that the COVID-19 pandemic trotted up a very big challenge, but at the same time, a very huge opportunity, like His Excellency said. And so let me say that perhaps by providence, the 9th Senate, under the committee of the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, maybe had a premonition. And I say so because just before the pandemic came on board, we had a roundtable where we brought in all the critical stakeholders with a view to assessing the agricultural sector and looking at those legislative interventions that we should bring on board as the 9th Senate as we position the agricultural sector to diversify the Nigerian economy. And I think the presentation by the governor of Kebbi State spoke to some of those desires for diversification and the efforts being made even within the context of the subnational, that is the states. So for us in the Senate, we are yet to discuss that roundtable, but the report has just been laid, I think 2 days ago, on Tuesday or yesterday, the report has been laid. And the intendment was for us to be able to discuss it. But of course, we are having the budget, which is one of the major legislative support we have to make to ensure that there is a response to this pandemic. And within that budget, effort, there are concessions given to the agricultural sector, because we know for a matter of fact, and which even the situation analysis has painted a critical picture on, the food security situation will worsen. And for us, we are aware the federal government, as an initial response, ordered the release of 70,000 tons of grains from the strategic grain reserve. And of course, if you look at the challenges of, from what even your situation analysis showed, there is slowdown in activity. Not absolutely, but definitely there was slowdown in the sense that in some places, farmers find it difficult to even go back to farm. Yes, if you look at January, February, March, up to May, the rainy season is just beginning, perhaps in the north, but the activities farmers want to go into requires that they go to prepare the land. And I think I'm personally aware in the field, a lot of farmers had challenges because the security agencies were preventing them from going to the farm. And I knew initially that was why we raised the alarm in the Senate leadership interaction with the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. And as such, they saw the agricultural activities as essential, totally. But what I want to add here is that, yes, there are efforts now to be made, and we need to double that effort if we are to encourage our farmers to go back to land. Unfortunately, again, the insecurity is further compounding the expectation we are having. But be that as it may, the Senate, I would say, is taking this very seriously. And so you can see why we're talking about what we're doing within the context of agriculture. We are also concerned about those things that will affect agriculture to at least fail in its duty to deliver on that expectation. And within the context of the budgetary provision in the palliative or the stimulus that the federal government is giving, I think the budget we just passed today, the budget for the agricultural sector is about 102 billion. And that is substantial because you need to look at the fact that we are already in June. And if this is properly applied, our expectation is that a lot will happen. But let me also say that there are some bills we have on ground, which we hope that we help going forward post-COVID to help rejuvenate the agricultural sector. And one of which is the food reserve, bill. The intent here is for the country to go back to at least having national strategic food reserve system. And where that is in place properly, it will also help government to modulate price, because you know government will be able to properly come in as buyer of last resort, because you have your, you know, your silos that you can actually stock. Right now, I know we are underperforming when you look at, you know, the amount of grains or other food items that are purchased into the, you know, silo system. So this, you know, our own thought is that with this food reserve system, we should be able to properly get the nation moving along that line. Now, finally, let me also say that we are also looking at some bills which will actually help to drive mechanization, because within the context of what we're dealing with now, we are very low in mechanization. And you can imagine if mechanization is, you know, actually enhanced, some of the challenges our small-scale farmers are facing will actually come down, in the sense that they will be able to increase their performance, and their, you know, productivity will actually go up. Finally, I don't have the full list, but I know there are a couple of bills that members are sponsoring. Some have already suffered setback, because, for example, there was a bill on the oil palm industrial estate, and this was thought to be inappropriate, in the sense that I think the ministry had some other programs that they felt was going to conflict with the intendment here. So by and large, ours is to give legislative interventions through budgetary support. We've done that sufficiently by the budget we have passed today, and at the same time through, you know, legislations, for which I want to tell you we have a couple, and I know I have a bill that perhaps by the time we come back from the recess, 2 weeks recess, which is on the agri-industry and modernization bill. I will be going for the second reading of this bill. And I can say for a matter of fact that what we have in those bills are perhaps designed to help us alleviate whatever shock we have suffered as a result of this pandemic, and to help the agricultural sector to become more focused, more resourceful, and more productive.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, sir. Thank you so much for sharing what you're doing. I mean, we've kept our ears on the news, and we've heard about some of these things. And like you said, it's as if the government saw this coming and they are planning ahead of time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on what you're doing in the Senate chambers.
Yeah, and then finally, before I back down, permit me to greet my elder brother, Your Excellency, distinguished Senator Obogbaimhe. It's a pleasure sharing this time with you. I've not seen you for quite a while, perhaps the lockdown.
Thank you.
We are neighbors, and so all the things your states are doing, I think we get the news. And it's quite challenging, because the aspect of the River Niger, the issue of irrigation, which your state is taking very seriously. People around my area in Borgu are really looking onto what you are doing as an example. And that is quite.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellencies. The Governor of Kebbi State and the Senator, the distinguished Senator, Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi. Please, we would like to proceed. I don't know if Alhaji Zubairu Abdullahi is on the line.
So that he is on the line.
Okay, please, sir.
He is Zubairu Abdullahi on the line. Mm-hmm.
Okay, sir, please, would you just briefly share with us what the Ministry, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development is doing to, you know, build resilience along the food value chain, the food supply chain in the Ministry of Agriculture? We've had a lot of information going on about the distributions you're doing, the palliatives, the support you're giving to farmers, and inputs you're giving them to help them in their production. Would you share more insights to that?
Thank you very much, the moderator. It's a pleasure for having an opportunity to speak with all these distinguished members of this very good panel. I will start, first of all, unlike my former colleague and my senator, Sabi Abdullahi. He was a staff of Federal Ministry of Agriculture, of course. Unlike him, I'm going to start by first of all greeting my governor, the Kebbi State Governor, Alhaji Atiku Bagudu. Sorry, everybody, I'm from Kebbi State, so I need to start by respectfully greeting my governor. Then Senator Sabi Abdullahi.
Understandable.
Senator Sabi Abdullahi, it's good also having an opportunity to talk to you. You are always eloquent whenever you are expressing yourself on issues of agriculture. Thank you so much. I'm speaking in on behalf of the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, who is unavoidably absent. He is currently in an engagement somewhere in the villa. And so he asked me today to be able to present some of the positions and what the ministry is doing to address the challenges we all face pertaining to COVID-19. And so I will start, because time is not much, and what he has asked me to mention here are too much. I will start by telling you there are two kinds of interventions that we are doing here in the ministry. There is an intervention, first of all, that is within our normal routine budgetary activity. The National Assembly did a very good job of giving us a budget line for the implementation of agricultural interventions this year. That was before the coming of COVID-19. Let me also draw the attention of every one of us here that no government, no agency of government, nobody in this world can ever be prepared for the situation of COVID-19. Nobody anticipated the extent and the damage that this thing could cause to virtually all the economy, and agriculture is not an exception. So initially, even before the onset of COVID-19, we already have a budget and we're implementing the budget, and the budget now is tailored towards addressing most of the challenges that are posed by COVID-19. There is another sustainability stimulus package, which we graciously obtained from the federal government. I'm going to speak from these two sides. I'm going to start by, first of all, what we are doing within our budget system. Then I'll go into the post-COVID-19. I also want to express our gratitude to the National Assembly, because when they were reviewing the budget, they reviewed every ministry's budget downward, but they did not do anything to agriculture. They did not touch agri budget. And I think this is a big plus. That is a reflection of the kind of seriousness the federal government attached to its response to the impact of COVID-19 on agriculture. So I'll start by telling you that the first thing we did was to, first of all, bring about palliative measures to reduce the impact of COVID-19 on the population, especially the vulnerable groups, because any order that restricts people from moving out of their homes is likely bound to compound their problem, because they are not going out to do daily earnings to earn enough money that will enable them buy food. So the Federal Ministry of Agriculture released 70,000 metric tons, and the distribution of the food items has gone far. And the report we are receiving from NEBA is they are almost finishing. And that 70,000 metric tons is a reduction from already the 100,000 metric tons that already we have in our stores. Meaning the government is now focused on efforts to make sure that we bring back the 70,000 as our strategic grains reserve. The Ministry of Agriculture also recognizes that different state governments have also opened up their buffer stocks. And that buffer stock plus the 70,000 metric tons we have released have successfully reduce the impact of COVID-19 of prices of food items. It has also succeeded in getting the most vulnerable groups. That is why you don't have too much death in this country as a result of hunger, courtesy of the coming of COVID-19. Then the ministry has also developed a post-COVID-19 sustainability plan. This is because we have a lot of relationship with so many international donor organizations that have helped us to conduct a lot of surveys to determine the impact of this lockdown on the food supply chain, on the movement of inputs, on the movement of livestock and every other thing. So we'd have a collective picture of the likely impact, and even the regional, the state, and at various levels, the impact of the lockdown on the production chain. So we were able to come up with strategic programs that we thought would assist in cushioning the effect of COVID-19 so that our farmers are back. One of the first things the ministry did was to instigate a meeting with all the 4 ministers that are in charge with security issues in the country. The Honorable Minister of Defense, Honorable Minister of Police Affairs, Honorable Minister of Interior, all of them came to Federal Ministry of Agriculture, sat down, and then were presented with the facts that came up from a study which indicated that this lockdown has affected seriously more the farmers than any other sector in the economy. And the supply of, the movement of food from the north to the south was disrupted. The movement of inputs from the south to the north was disrupted. Movement of livestock was disrupted. Then the movement of poultry and poultry products from the southwest part of Nigeria to the southeast was also affected. Because of that, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture hurriedly brought in the security agencies to translate fully to the Nigerians what the president said when he said the food items were not included, that we should allow the free movement of food items. A committee was set up, and that committee was chaired by an Assistant Inspector General of Police. That same committee is replicated in all the states, and they are making effort to ensure that food items, agro inputs do have a free way of movement. But of course, there are a lot of challenges. This committee was able to change the pattern of the flow of food and the other inputs very well. But there are, of course, different states have different kinds of orders on lockdown. A certain food will move from a particular 3-4 states, then it will meet a state where there is a total lockdown. So the intervention of the AIG together with the committee that was set up have actually succeeded in reducing the tension. But we have not reached where we want to be up to now. Then I want to briefly also tell you that within our own budget, there is the launch of a model of grazing reserve for adoption in other states. We had an attempt of doing a Ruga project, which was rejected because of misinformation. So what we are trying to do now is to establish a model grazing reserve that could be a model for other states to emulate and move forward. We want to introduce a cluster model for promoting commodity value chains in partnership with interested states and private sector. We're using the model that is obtained presently in Malaysia, where we're going to do a cluster project implementation, which will encourage the intervention of all the different areas of agriculture within a cluster so that there could be immediate citing of the result, and then other areas could also pick it from there. We want to establish embryo transfer centers to improve domestic milk production. We want to implement the first phase of training of extension workers involving 75,000 people and strengthening farmer education and extension. We found that the issue of extension is a big challenge in the country. When the World Bank was here supporting agricultural extension, it was a very good program, and many states were keen into that. But after the funding from the World Bank has left, there is a big gap, and then the issue of funding of agricultural extension became a challenge. Now the federal government, as part of its effort to make sure that agriculture actually move from where it is to a higher level, is embarking of employment and training of 75,000 extension workers. Then there is also an effort to integrate the NPower graduates into extension program, which the program has already started. Then what is very important, just like Senator Sabi Abdullahi mentioned, is the issue of changing the way we produce our foods. About 65% of the population in Nigeria are involved in agriculture, yet the output is still within the range that is far below what is obtained in many other West African countries. That is the yield per hectare. So we, in the ministry now, supported by the minister, his main program is agricultural mechanization. He has had a very good relationship with the National Assembly. They have understood the program and they are supporting it financially. On the side of the presidency, they have supported the integration and the cooperation with the Brazilian government. We are talking about 10,000 units of tractors coming to the country to support agricultural production. All the necessary paperwork have been completed. The program will be launched very soon. Then the ministry is also in the process of reactivating 3 truck assembly plants that will help in producing, in supporting agricultural transportation. Then the ministry is also planning to fast track the recapitalization of the Nigerian Agricultural Insurance Corporation and the Bank of Agriculture in collaboration with the Central Bank of Nigeria, Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Already a committee is set up to restructure and to reposition the Bank of Agriculture so that it becomes the bank that is more friendly and more amenable to the needs and aspirations of Nigerian farmers. The ministry is also supporting the development of a private sector-led agricultural commodity exchange to enable Nigeria to become agricultural commodity marketing hub in West African region and beyond. Then the ministry is also supporting the establishment of 5 modern abattoirs, 1 each in Enugu, Rivers, Taraba, Benue, and Bauchi states. Then the ministry is also in the process, in the final stages of establishing special agricultural processing zone in each of the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria. Those are some of the highlights. Some of the highlights mentioned for what we are doing. But briefly, let me tell you what we're.
Thank you, please. Please, we are planning to host an exclusive series. This is the beginning of the series.
Okay, I wanted to tell you what he said about the post-COVID-19 stimulus package, where the federal government has given us up to almost 600 billion naira to support our interventions in agriculture, 60 billion naira for rural roads intervention to make sure that the rural roads are open to the market. Then, okay, because you say you don't have time, let me stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We are so grateful for this this very insightful presentation. The list is unending. There are just so many interventions that are going on to support the COVID-19, the effect of the COVID-19 shock. Now would like to hear from Mrs. Ndidi Muneli MFR, the managing partner of Sahel Capital. Please, ma'am, would you share with us your own perspective from the private sector, the efforts that the private sector is putting in place to mitigate the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on the agricultural supply chain? You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I wanted to share my screen, so if you can enable that, I have a quick presentation. Honorable, His Excellency the Governor of Kebbi State, great to connect with you. All the honorables and excellencies on the platform, thank you for your excellent speeches. It's really an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to speak with you. I wanted to share my screen, but it seems like it's not working. So I'll just share a few remarks. The first thing I would say is that honestly, the big drivers of the agriculture sector in Nigeria is actually the private sector. SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, from input providers to processors, to aggregators, to input providers, equipment providers, all the way to the retailers. And they have been affected by COVID-19. Our research shows that actually 50% of the companies we work with through the Nourishing Africa platform have had to shut down because of the impact of COVID-19. And that is really, really terrible. The challenge for us is really what we can do about it. And if I had to basically share some takeaways with you, the main takeaway would be that we already had a fragile ecosystem before COVID-19. But what COVID-19 has shown us is that our fragile ecosystem needs to be rebuilt. We didn't have credible data on food markets, lack of social safety nets, fragmented ecosystems, and limited collaboration between actors in this ecosystem. We also had very disorganized markets that don't lend themselves to social distancing, and a policy framework that is a bit fragmented. And I just want to underscore this, especially for the policymakers here, is that in the agriculture sector now, we SMEs have to interface with the Ministry of Trade and Investment, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Science and Technology, the Ministry of Health because of NAFDAC, and the central bank. And oftentimes we have competing initiatives from you and competing signals, and often competing signals. Now, this COVID-19 is a 12 to 18-month battle, and we have to use this opportunity to rebuild and rethink. Some of you are part of the roundtable that World Food Programme is leading, and when we look at the hunger across the land, we realize that there's a sense of urgency. There's also a sense of urgency to address nutrition, because so many of our people who have lost jobs can no longer afford to feed their families. There has also been a decline in remittances. So I have 2 recommendations that I want to put forward. First, we have to ensure the availability and accessibility of nutritious food in our country all year round. That means that first we need data on the inflow of food into our states, but we need to enhance the productivity of our farmers, supply chain logistics, storage facilities. But with all due respect to the Ministry of Agriculture and other speakers, private sector has to lead. So even with mechanization, private sector has to lead. Let us empower private sector to offer leasing of equipment to farmers as opposed to buying tractors and then distributing them. The second is that we have to ensure the affordability of nutritious food. 56% of household income in Nigeria is spent on food, one of the highest in the world. That was pre-COVID. Now, with the devaluation of our currency and the restrictions that we're facing, we're seeing 20 to 100% increases in the price of food across Nigeria. Even Indian households spend 30% of their household income on food. So what do we need to do? We need to create incentives to reduce the operating cost of SMEs. We need strong anti-competition laws to ensure that the private sector can thrive. And we need policies that support SMEs to locally process. The two initiatives I'm involved in, one is called nourishingafrica.com. It's a hub that we've created to help SMEs scale, to move from micro to small, small to medium, giving them data, access to financing, and access to knowledge, and upgrading their skills. The second, and I just want to use this example, is that we've launched an initiative funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with a lot of support from FMAD, and we're working in 5 states, called Advancing Local Dairy Development in Nigeria. Nigeria currently imports about 99% of the processed milk we consume in this country, and yet we have the 4th largest cattle herd. What are we doing? We're leveraging innovation and technology, but driven by our private sector. We have companies like L&Z, Saj Foods, Majestic, Sabore, who have committed to local sourcing. We're putting communities into clusters, the nomadic communities, we're training them, we're providing them with feed and fodder, training, artificial insemination, and we're creating an entire ecosystem. This is because it's private sector led, and when it's private sector led, it can be sustainable. How are we going to rebuild post-COVID? This is an opportunity to reimagine and dream. And there are many entry points. I would suggest that every single actor has a role to play. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And I've listed a lot of ideas. But if I had to pick one, because we have state governors and policymakers on the line, I would say that we have to leverage the competitive and comparative advantage of your states to increase the enabling environment for private sector to really thrive, to ensure that we can grow businesses. One strategy you can push is a local sourcing strategy. That every single company that processes food in Nigeria, every single restaurant and supermarket that sources food has to source 60% from local farmers. If you push that, it will be transformational. Brazil did 30%, and they've seen a transformation in the Brazilian landscape. And one of our senators was talking about Brazil. We have to redesign our markets. Our markets are not suited for social distancing. And then we need to ensure that we invest in innovation and technology. There are many other suggestions, and I know I'm out of time. So finally, I'll end with a quote that I love. You know, it says, this generation is no longer asking God to grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change. We're asking the Almighty to grant us the courage and the wisdom to change the things we cannot accept. I cannot accept that Nigeria is a net importer of food. I cannot accept that 1 out of every 3 Nigerian child is stunted. And as a result, COVID-19 is giving us a chance to reimagine and rebuild. We need every actor to play their part to rebuild this ecosystem. I'm happy to share some of the detailed suggestions I have, but private sector must be at the front seat to drive this change. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Ndidi Muneli. Thank you so much for that very, very enlightening session, for throwing some light on what we need to do. And we would also like to hear some of those, your recommendations. Please don't leave without sharing them. Our next presenter is Dr. Chinedu Zephaniah. He is a team lead, Development Finance Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Please, Dr. Chinedu, would you share with us what the CBN is doing in the monetary policy as incentives to facilitate post-pandemic recovery efforts across the agricultural value chain? I know you have a lot to share, but please kindly, keep it within the limits of our time. 5 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, the Governor of Kebbi State, the one we call the landlord of Anchor Borrowers Program. Your Excellency, the representative of the Honorable Minister of Agri, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, forgive me if I did not follow the protocol. I'll go straight to what the assignment is for me, to speak on the Central Bank of Nigeria's monetary policy and incentives to facilitate COVID-19 recovery across the agri value chain. My director was the one that was supposed to make this presentation, but he's in another meeting. As you know, these are desperate times. Central Bank is full of a lot of activities. We are doing our best to combat the economic effects of COVID-19. So I'll run you through just a brief preamble. I'll speak about the broad monetary policy, and then I'll narrow it to specifics about agriculture value chain. It is no longer news that our lives and livelihoods have been affected. Supply chains around the world have been disrupted, including agriculture. I listened with rapt attention as Kwaw spoke about the effects of the lockdown. But he didn't mention to you that in a separate report they have, 37 countries of the world have enacted export restrictions on food. When people argue about closing Nigeria border, there might not even be any need to do so now, because those nations who used to smuggle foods across our borders will be struggling to feed their people. For us in Nigeria, with over 200 mouths to feed, at the central bank, the slogan is simple: there can be a better time to ensure food security and self-sufficiency. And then in so doing, we will achieve foreign exchange accretion and diversification of the economy. So this is all encapsulated in our mandate, which is to achieve price stability and ensure that we use our development finance interventions and achieve objectives in focal sectors. So the next slide is the broad, next slide, please. Okay, so the next slide is the broad monetary policies that we have embarked on to facilitate COVID-19 recovery. First is that, as Ndidi spoke now, you could see the passion as she spoke about private sector being at the driving seat of anything we need to do sustainably about COVID-19 recovery. The CBN is aware of this, and so all the facilities that we've extended to real sector, critical sectors of the economy that we expect this recovery to come from, their moratorium have been extended, even for those who are already enjoying moratorium, who had already enjoyed moratorium on the facility. There's been interest rate reduction. As you know, central bank interventions are at single-digit interest rates. Before now, it was 9%. The central bank governor announced on March 16 that effective March 1 this year, interest rates has come down from 9% to 5%. There has also been a policy of regulatory forbearance for deposit money banks. This policy goes to address restructuring of loans to agribusinesses, real sector, critical real sector players, so that it will release some cash flow for them to continue the operation, expand their activities. The CBN has also strengthened the LDR policy. Given the successes we've recorded, the Central Bank of Nigeria is amenable to flexibility in managing the loan deposit rate policy with DMBs to ensure that more loans go to agriculture and real sector. And finally, on the broad monetary policy, there is a 3.5 trillion stimulus package to address the critical sectors. So because of time, I'll go straight to specifics. As at today, as at last Friday, sorry, at the report of COVID-19 targeted facility, the TCF facility, over 22.1 billion has been disbursed out of the 50 billion TCF. And this is to 5,892 SMEs and 26,872 households in Nigeria. So a facility that was brought out at for 50 billion, about half of it had been disbursed as at Friday last week. There is another facility for 100 billion naira that is to support health sector. As you know, the primary effect of COVID-19 is health of everybody, including people in agri value chain. And then this is targeted at pharmaceuticals. Many of these pharmaceuticals, I'm glad to hear that the landlord of Anchor Bora program is establishing a cassava processing plant in Kebbi. The listeners might want to know that cassava is critical, not just for ethanol and other industrial uses, but in pharmaceutical. When you buy Panadol the next time, the white you're seeing there is predominantly high quality cassava flour. So the health sector facility will benefit a lot of players in the agri value chain, particularly those who are involved in cassava production and processing. Because this year is a very peculiar year, the Central Bank of Nigeria has earmarked over 300 billion naira to finance agriculture under the Anchor Borrowers program and introduced the 5-star model. What this means is that for all the farmers who have borrowed under ABP and repaid their loans as and at when due, those farmers will be entitled to cultivate up to 5 hectares. Well, the intention is to ramp up production of critical agricultural products. In addition to that, we have renewed activities with state governments under the AADS to provide rural feeder routes so that agricultural produce can be transported to the cities. And indeed, finally, there is effort at providing commercial agri credit and RSSF for major agricultural concerns around the country. So this is in a nutshell the activities, policies, and incentives that the central bank has embarked on to combat the economic impact of COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zephaniah. Thank you for sharing what the CBN is doing. I mean, we can see most of them, and then thank you for throwing more light on some of the things we didn't know. It's very, very helpful to hear that. And please, now we're going to be hearing from Dr. Adeola Odedina. He's the Commissioner of Agriculture in Ogun State. Very passionate about agriculture, and they are also doing a lot of things. Please, sir, would you share from your own perspective what is happening in Ogun State?
Permit me to stand on existing protocol to save time. I'm the Commissioner for Agriculture in Ogun State. I will take you through, within the allotted time, I'll try and talk about our goal in agriculture, our pre-COVID-19 strategy, and then our post-pandemic recovery plan, and how we are able to move agriculture forward in Ogun State. In Ogun State, our key strategy pillars in agriculture, first of all, we are interested in food security, job creation, nutrition and food safety, industrialization, and agricultural hubs. When the pandemic started, the governor authorized that we have a specific COVID response plan for agriculture. We revised our budget, and then we developed a protocol for moving agriculture forward. In the Ministry of Agriculture, we have a COVID-19 monitoring team that works with private sector and all stakeholders. We develop specific documents for movement of inputs, also for receiving fertilizer, herbicide from other parts of the state. Because in Ogun State, it might be very expensive, costly for us if we abandon the planting season, because we have a lot of project lined up for us. We are participating in one of the largest anchor border program in the country. When the governor came in, I think to date, 70,000 people have been registered for various anchor border programs, highest in cassava, 27,000. So we're very productive. So in what we did was that if you want to supply us agricultural input from other states, we one of the states that gave out permits, you will notify us from that you want to supply us fertilizer, and our team will meet you at the border. We decontaminate the truck, the vehicle, and then we lead you to our warehouse. With that, we're able to stock all our input centers with inputs and fertilizer, including those meant for anchor border program. In fact, we receive all our fertilizer from a company in Kano. And with that also, we're able to flag off the planting season during the pandemic, and then we link our farmers to input and credit. And to date, we are going ahead with agricultural extension. We have a specific way of carrying out our training and step-down training. We're also focusing on smallholder farmers because 70% of our people, they are smallholders. And then we also launched a planting material palliative for smallholder farmer, where we gave planting materials to about 40,000 smallholder farmers. We are also planning a new program on youth vanguard and food banking for at least 5,000 youths. All our smallholder farmers have access to inputs. And then to date, we are participating in Central Bank Anchor Border Program. We are also doing World Bank Ogun State Economic Transformation Project. We are going on with IFPRI Ogun Value Chain Development Project in rice and cassava. We have our Ogun State Enterprise Development Project as listed there. And we have this amount of people, mostly youth, registered for agricultural opportunity in the state, totaling about 63,000. And that's why I said, either we like it or not, we have to go on with agriculture. And then as per our post-pandemic recovery plans, one, we are also determined to mainstream nutrition and healthy living as part of our agricultural response strategy, because farmer must eat well and must be protected by growing about 45 crops. We want to increase support and extension service for everybody interested in agriculture. The coronavirus is sacking people from all sectors, and agriculture must not refuse anybody. So we are deliberately strengthening food processing and production locations so that they can absorb more people. When people are sacked from their work, either from the city or from other country, the next line of action is that they go back to the rural community, to their village, to look for agricultural opportunities. So we are focusing on traditional agricultural assets in all our farm settlements. We are also ensuring that the rural economy is not collapse or shrink because food planting, agriculture is labor intensive. Planting, harrowing, plowing, seed, all these things are going on in the rural
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, so to wrap it up,
please.
yes, to wrap it up, we are also supporting the private sector, as earlier mentioned, so that they continue to do what they know how to do. So because of time, that's all we're maybe to do, to tell you that agriculture is still moving on in Ogun State with our revised agenda on agriculture and our definite COVID response plan for recovery.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adedina, for sharing what is happening in Ogun State and all the support the farmers are receiving. You talked about support for private sector, and right now I would like to invite Dr. Manzo Maigari, the Director General of the Nigeria Agribusiness Group, to share with us. He's going to take on the Q&A session, and he will also do a wrap on this technical session. Dr. Maigari, please, you have the floor. Hello, Dr. Manzo.
Yeah, good evening. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you now. Welcome, sir.
Your Excellency, the Governor of Kebbi State, and the Chairman of the National Council on Food Security, the distinguished Senator and senior colleague, Dr. Aliyu Sabi, the representative of the Honorable Minister, permit me to stand on existing protocols. We are running a little bit behind schedule, but I'll try as much as possible to catch up. Your Excellency, I'm going to address you here as the Chairman of the National Council on Food Security, not as the Governor of Kebbi State. And therefore, my question will go to you, as well as the distinguished Senator and the representative of the Minister. It's a kind of a compound question, and I will expect the three of you to address specific areas in this of this question. We have suffered disruptions, we have suffered dislocations, but most importantly, and the worst affected are smallholder farmers. In the series of interventions that have taken place, policies, handouts, doleouts, what we see is that 70,000 metric tons of grains have been given out. You will agree with me that that is like a drop of water in the desert. Consequently, this has caused most of our smallholder farmers to sell their assets, every valuable asset, including farm tools, planting materials, and virtually everything. Those that didn't even sell could not even access their farms because of high-handedness of the security forces in trying to implement the lockdown, enforcing the lockdown. Personally, I have had to intervene in more than 5 different states where people moving food across the country were arrested. The most pathetic case being about 35 trucks loaded with day-old chicks that left Ibadan for Eastern Nigeria and were detained in Edo State for 9 hours. Even though the Veterinary Council of Nigeria had to get involved to get those trucks released. But I can assure us that anybody that
We can get Dr. Manzo.
Yeah, it seems we lost his audio.
Yeah, Dr. Manzo is off.
Hello, Dr. Manzo. Hello.
Dr. Adedina.
Hello.
Yeah, distinguished senator. Nice to see you.
Okay, it seems we lost Dr. Manzo. He's I can't see him here. Yes. Please, just to continue with the Q&A session. During the technical session, there was a very interesting point that Dr. Chinedu Zephaniah mentioned about border closure and the issue of trade, inter-country, like regional trade. Of course, we know that that trade, bilateral...
Please, I am back.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I had a disruption.
It's all right. Please proceed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So right now, the question I want answered is this: what exactly is the government looking at doing? What exactly are we trying to do to be able to bring an intervention that is going to be sector specific, targeted at smallholder farmers, to ensure that we gain on lost time, that we gain on the time on what we have on what these smallholder farmers have lost in terms of production, because the food we will eat next year is going to be produced now. This is a very serious issue. Because we can almost see that we are transiting from a health emergency to a hunger crisis. And I would like Your Excellency, as the chairman of the National Council on Food Security, Dr. Sabi, and the representative of the Honorable Minister, to please address Nigerians and let's understand specifically, if possible, a step-by-step strategy that is being considered to resolve this issue. Thank you very much.
Hello?
Thank you, sir. I'm here, sir.
Well, I'm waiting for the moderator because I don't know who is most
Yes, I'm
appropriate to
done.
answer.
Moderator, I'm done. They can answer the question now.
Yes, please. The floor is open to answer the question. In reality, Dr. Manzo is supposed to handle the Q&A session, so he just started. So Dr. Manzo.
Yeah.
Hello.
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Yes, Commissioner for Agriculture, August.
I think he's trying to give an answer to the question raised by Dr.
Yeah, I was asking who the question, from whom an answer is being expected.
Your Excellency, I have stated that the question is a major national policy, is seeking to address a major national policy issue. And yes. I expect you, as I said, addressing you as the chairman of the National Food Security Council, the senator and the representative of the minister to address the question, sir.
Thank you. And I will answer to the extent that I can, because some of it was most appropriately answered by the National Assembly, the CBN, and the Honorable Minister. However, and I must start by clarifying that the National Food Security Council is chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari. I am the vice chairman.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I am the vice chairman. And what I think you asked, what are the sector-specific policies that are being put in place to make up for lost time, if I can summarize it in that way. And I think a lot of them are in place already. Some of them have been described by the central bank in terms of what they have been doing commendably under the Anchor Borrowers Program, including forbearances, including allowing companies that have borrowed, including for agriculture, to extend loan repayment. The Federal Minister of Agriculture also have hinted, and I will allow them to speak to those specifics. I think it came up at the tail end of his presentation. Today, as we all know, there is an economic sustainability committee, I believe headed by the Vice President. And today they also submitted their report to Mr. President, which we believe contain further measures. All this wouldn't have happened without the support of the National Assembly, who are gracious to consider the loan packages, who are gracious to consider responses that the federal government has put in place that will enable us to support farmers at the lower end, particularly of the income strata. The federal fertilizer initiative is working well. In fact, we have seen a reduction in fertilizer, commendably by Mr. President. The drop in petroleum prices is helping many farmers who are in irrigation. So, and financing is being extended either directly or to the states. And in conjunction with the federal government, led by the federal government, a lot of young people are being mobilized to partake in wet season and subsequently dry season farming. But our local small-scale farmers are being supported. And I said earlier that the pandemic, particularly the lockdown in many states, have not affected primary production as much as the higher value end, because most of those in the primary production lives in villages and communities where their protection is next to their homes. However, gradual supply interruptions will definitely affect everyone. So I believe the federal government is conscious about it, is supportive. The National Food Security Council, particularly President Muhammadu Buhari, has been on top of this issue, and financing is being extended to states to also support and ensure that the those farmers that have lost time are supported with improved variety of yields, improved financing, improved mechanization, including the just announced the Brazilian initiative, which will support higher yields and compensate for lost time. But I believe Central Bank, Agriculture, Minister of Agriculture, and our distinguished senator will be able to add more. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Manzo, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Well, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I expect that maybe the distinguished senator will say something, or that covers everything.
Permit me to just make one or two remarks. I think if I understand your question very well, you talked about the intervention in terms of the palliative, that is the 70,000 grains that was released. And of course, that was a drop in the ocean. Very apt, very true. And you want to know what specifically is being done. For us in the National Assembly, this issue you raised about the strategic reserve system is of major concern to us. I was in the Ministry of Agriculture, and I know in the 80s, 90s, when this program started, I think it was a little bit well focused, and somehow along the line, we tend to have derailed, the program, in the sense that our silos are no longer getting the quantum of grains they should. The whole intendment, like I said, is when you have a national food security system, it must be anchored on a very strong national food reserve. And within the context of the subnational, like the state, what they are supposed to have is just bulk storage. And of course, it goes down there to the farmers storage system. So we must take this very serious. And I think that is what informed our decision to bring back the National Food Reserve Agency Bill. This bill has suffered many times in the National Assembly, but given the reality we are facing now, we believe this has to come in. I listened earlier on to Mrs. Wanile, and she's quite on point. I agree that yes, the private sector is the key driver, but when you look at the extent of market failures in an economy like Nigeria, then you can also understand that for the private sector to truly be the best driver, then the federal government or all the governments must be there to ensure that that vehicle is sitting on a very solid tire that is not leaking, that does not have any patch. And I think this is the extent to which the government must intervene. And I see the food reserve system intervention as something that will keep that, a hope to the private sector, and particularly the small scale farmers. Because if the farmer produces and the price is poor, where is his risk in terms of pricing? And I think that is where government must play a very key role to ensure that there is that modulation. And I think if this is done, we'll definitely be able to make some headway. Now, earlier on, I think the aspect of the palliative, there were a lot of intervention funds that was given. And I think earlier the representative of the minister was trying to give us insight into that. If you recall, the only one he mentioned was about the 60 billion that is supposed to support the roads, small, that is a feeder road system. This is of major concern. And I think we actually discussed this at the level of the Economic Sustainability Committee headed by the Vice President, that yes, this rural access and mobility is key. However, we raise concern to the effect that this program has been ongoing for quite a while. And before we make substantial progress, we need to review to know what is happening. I'm happy His Excellency, the Governor of Kebbi State is here. And I wouldn't know if Kebbi State is part of the RAM state. But if it is not, what we should begin to work towards is making sure that the access roads are key. Because when our farmers produce and the roads are poor, the entire cost goes into transportation. And the farmers are left more poor than before. And so there is no incentive within that context for them to continue. And so for us in the National Assembly, our intendment is to put the smallholder farmer in the front burner. And like I said, the bill I'm working on, which when we come back in, in the next 2 weeks from our recess, because we are on recess today, it's on agri-industry and modernization bill. I want to say very clearly that the smallholder farmer and what we even call family farmer is actually in the forefront of this particular bill's intervention. And we believe, let's stop deceiving ourselves.
Okay.
70 to 80% of our farmers are smallholder farmers. So whatever intervention we're doing, if we don't bring them on board, we are surely not going to get the result we desire. So these are our thoughts. And like the moderator said, this is an ongoing discussion. We want to commend you for that and look forward to more engagement of this subject matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, distinguished Senator. My next question will be to the minister, to the representative of the minister. And the question is being asked by Zainab Bagudu. And she says, are there any specific interventions for female smallholder farmers from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture? And if yes, how can they access it?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start by answering this question. We have a women in agriculture arm in the extension department, and they are currently working with the cooperative department to develop modalities that will bring in female farmers, female entrepreneurs, and then bring in the vulnerable groups, the physically challenged groups, so that they have a bite into the palliative that is going to assist people to do different aspects of agriculture: snail farming, rabbitry, poultry production, broiler, all these kind of aspects of agriculture within livestock and within the crop production. Because this time around, it is to carry everybody along. We are collaborating with the central bank. I'm sure Mr. Chinedu must have informed you. We are collaborating with the central bank And then even the palliative that we're talking about, releasing funds to farmers, it is actually going to be done through microcredit system. And we are going to leverage on the experience of the central bank in reaching out to genuine farmers through the Ancoporos program. So the ministry is not thinking of doing any of these interventions alone. The kind of pandemic the country is facing today does not call for any operation in silo. We are going to work with the central bank, we are going to work with NACC, we are going to work with every relevant agency so that the end result will bring relief to the farmers. And they focus on middle income farmers for now. And I like what His Excellency mentioned earlier. He said the impact of COVID-19 on small scale farmers is not as big as we are looking at, especially if you look at their production. They are still producing, but the biggest challenge they have is on the marketing of their farm produce. If they produce, there is a lockdown that has not allowed them to move forward, especially the ones that are producing perishable crops, tomato and many other kinds of outputs that actually require immediate sale because the storage system is bad. I also agree totally with what Senator Sabo mentioned pertaining to the ministry is in total support. There were several hearings that were called at the National Assembly, and the ministry has made its position known. We are in support of that effort. We're in support of bringing about a big relief. We are not happy as a ministry that we have only 100,000 metric tons of grains in our silos. And you can see the challenge we faced when we dropped 70,000 metric tons. If the states have not done their own part of releasing the buffer stock, I wonder where we would have been now. I thank you so much for.
Thank you very much. We're running out of time, and I'll take only 2 more questions. And I urge panelists to just take a minute to answer those questions. The next question comes from Abdullahi Alimi, and it's actually directed to NDD. But the question is talking about traceability, quality, the quality food supply, and that, all that. But he is saying, is there any policy that can be put in place to ensure more transparency in terms of quality of foods supplied by the producers? I'm not sure Mrs. Ndidi is the right person to answer this question, but all the same, since it is directed to her, let's see what she can do with the question.
Thank
Madam.
you so much, sir. Definitely, I'm qualified to answer the question. I have many hats I wear, sir. I'm the co-founder of ACIOE, and we source locally from 10,000 farmers. I'm also involved in a range of long-term projects and seed systems in yam and cassava through Basics and ISWA. And so we definitely, and maize. So I work with the smallholder farmers across Nigeria and in Ghana. So just to answer the question, I think there kind of have to be 3 approaches to address this because it's a real issue. The first one is what has been alluded to, the need for extension support and training. We really need to set standards for our farmers and we need to train them. And a very good entry point is actually off-takers. And that's why I like the off-taker model that works with companies like Nestle, Nigerian breweries, and even Ace Foods, SMEs that source. Because if they source from farmers, they can train farmers, they can set standards. The second is that we have to strengthen our regulatory agencies, both at the national level and within the state ecosystem. We have to strengthen our ADPs as well. And then finally, we have to empower consumers, because I think consumer education is also critical, because consumers will demand high quality, and if they demand high quality, we'll see that trickle through the entire ecosystem. The last thing I want to talk about is food fraud. There's tremendous food fraud in Nigeria. And there's a lot of dumping of substandard products. So we need to strengthen our customs, and we need our embassies abroad to also lobby on our behalf so that we can stop the exportation of substandard food into Nigeria.
Yes, can I come in, please?
Hello, yeah, who wants to speak?
Yeah, Senator Sabi on the line.
Okay, Senator, distinguished, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. And let me commend, Mrs. Nwaneli for that, response. Well, for me, I just want to make my intervention from the perspective of the regulatory system she talked about. And having reviewed all that has been happening, you agree with me that we don't have a very strong regulatory system that is targeting the agricultural products as it is. This idea of food is a transition. We know there are things that are raw you can eat, but of course food is the end product. But before then, which is where agriculture comes in, especially after you have harvested and whether processed or semi-processed, that particular angle, that particular stage is actually the area that is highly deficient in terms of a regulatory framework. And let me say very clearly that the Agri-Industry and Modernization Bill I talked about earlier has an entire chapter that is dealing with the provisions for agricultural standards. And this is anchored on the fact that, for example, we import a lot of foods, and that is what Ms. Nwanili was talking about in terms of the fraud. Some of the things that are being said to be in a particular food, is it correct? And even in terms of the labeling, where is it produced? How is it produced? And all other things that comes with what a standard product should look like in agriculture. I think there is a huge gap here, and we are putting a legislative framework here to actually address that. And it will come in by way of what we call voluntary standards and mandatory standards, because there are some standards that have to be voluntary, but you need to create the enabling environment to get the drivers who will take up that voluntary standard. Why there are those that will be mandatory, where you are convinced beyond reasonable doubt that the framework for such mandatory standards are in place. All this we have made provision for in the bill in question. So it's my hope that, of course, we are working very hard to see that that bill sees the light of the day. And I will urge that all interested stakeholders should please, when the time comes, take interest in what this bill is and help us to add value to it. Because legislation, for us in the parliament, we introduce a piece of legislation. It's not cast in iron. And so when we start the legislative process, we want those who are in the field, those who are to be impacted, to look at what we have proposed with a view to adding value to it so that we can have something that is workable. I yield.
Thank you very much, distinguished Senator. I will take my last question, and it goes to the Ogun State Governor. Ogun State Commissioner for Agriculture. The question comes from Azaz Kukoyi, and he is saying that the inputs supplies that you say you are giving to farmers, small-scale farmers, are extremely difficult to access. What will you do? What will you give us?
They are extremely difficult to
access.
Well,
yes.
I think
that's what Kukoyi is saying.
Okay, in Ogun State, we have 9 agro input centers. We also have about 4 extension agents per local government area. Each extension agent himself is an input station. So we have a system in place, especially during this pandemic, that will not allow smallholder farmers and farmers to be moving from one place to the other. We also have a poster, a leaflet, that contains all the phone number of all the extension agents so that they can access input. So what we are doing in Ogun State is to make sure that we are not citing the pandemic as an excuse to stop extension service. So we've also done planting material palliative through the extension agents. Because what we are talking about here is that this pandemic is also bringing about agricultural opportunities. So people want to get job through agriculture. If we don't deliberately focus on smallholder farmers, they get cut off from this opportunity. So that's why we are focusing on linkage of all sorts of persons who want to get solace from agriculture onto mechanization input and mechanization and extension service. So we are the first the first state to stock all our input stations with fertilizer, seed from as far as Kano, Kaduna, etc. So I will advise my friends to link up with the extension agent in his community if its location is not in one of the 9 places that we have agro-input center. The extension agents have been given permission to move around and to respond to input demand either from farmer group, investors, emerging farmer, or somebody who wants to relate to agriculture, especially in this difficult time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner. I'm going to close the question and answer section here, but I'm going to close it with a comment. And my comment is this, specifically to those of us that have found ourselves in position of policy making. It is important that we realize that Nigeria has everything that it requires to become a food giant. However, the assets upon which we need to leverage to leapfrog agriculture are scattered in up to 6 different MDAs of the federal government, and these are clogged. The possibility of a synergy to achieve meaningful goals in agriculture are clogged by inter-ministerial, inter-agency rivalries. And as a result, these assets are lying west. We do not need to look far. Even within the purview of the federal government, the assets, the lands that the federal government has, we can become food secure in no time. I'm aware that the distinguished senator is very passionate about moving agriculture and creating even some level of cooperation that will bring about a turnaround or a paradigm shift. But it is important that we begin to realize that these assets that we require to achieve these lofty goals are scattered across different sectors. And nobody is better placed than the Senate and the National Assembly to bring a solution to this. I want to thank the CBN. There are questions for the CBN, but there are not too many, and that shows that the CBN is doing a good job. But what is important also is that I will advise that we begin to look at synergy seriously and align from the CBN to the Federal Ministry of Agri, to the state ministries of Agri, so that we can achieve that which is expected of us in no time. Thank you very much for coming to this panel. Thank you very much for the contributions that you have made. I want to specifically also mention Mrs. Ndidi. I want to appreciate you for all that you are doing. You are excellent.
Next slide.
Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate. Thank you. Bye-bye.
First of all, let me just thank every single participant. And first of all, let me thank all our amazing panelists from Dr. Manzo Maigari. Thank you for your great moderation with Lillian. You did a fantastic job. Please, you can, type a round of applause to our moderators. They did a fantastic job. IFPRI did a wonderful presentation. We promised that every single presentation that was made will be emailed to every single person. Mr. Mati from the Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce, thank you for being a great partner on this. Ndidi Ewuneli, she's one of the great entrepreneurs in the agricultural space. We continue to admire the things you're doing with Sahel Consulting, and we encourage the Senate, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, and the Kebbi State government, other state governments here to really work with her because she has great innovative ideas. Distinguished Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, good to see you again, sir. It's been a while, but I'm glad we're able to connect and keep up the good work in the Senate. And anywhere we can support you, we'll be there to support the work you're doing in the Senate. Dr. Odedina from Ogun State, we see what His Excellency is doing there. We want to thank him for his support and also allowing you to participate in the panel. And if there's any way we can help out in Ogun State, we'll definitely do our best and share ideas, especially around urban farming. And Dr. Chinedu Sevenaya from the Central Bank, thank you for taking time to share the great incentive that CBN is offering. It comes at a time when there are fears that Nigeria's GDP will contract by negative 4.4% to 8% if we're not careful. So those incentives are really important, especially from a monetary point of view. His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Kebbi State, Senator Abubakar Bagudu, good to see you again, sir. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. We know we had to try and drag you in here, but you took time out, and your comments were about what's happening, not just on the national level, but also on the state level, were well received. I hope I covered everybody, just in case I didn't miss anybody. But I just want to thank the great ACIOE team that put this together. You cannot imagine the amount of work it takes to put all this together, run through slides, and make sure that everyone's working together. But once again, I want to thank every single one, all the participants. You have been with us for the last 2 hours. So thank you so much for being here. I just want to end with this. I think it's important that we definitely incorporate gender inclusion in the agricultural sector. All of us grew up with mothers, and we know the drive that women have. So this is the time to really think more about gender inclusion, think about SMEs in the sector, and really think how we can bring the private sector and get them more involved in what's going on. We admire what's going on at the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. I forgot to mention Mr. Abdullahi, the director from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. Thank you so much for the great comments and insights you shared, especially what the ministry is doing with the inputs to the smallholder farmers and across different areas, even from the grain reserves. Thank you for bringing and pointing those great points that you mentioned earlier. So on that note, once again, thank everyone. We apologize for keeping you for almost 2 hours without giving you a drink or food to eat. But we're releasing you to go and have your great dinners at the moment. We want to say thank you so much once again to every single person. And we'll definitely be in touch with every single one of you. And please, all participants, you will definitely get 2 things: an email with all the slides and presentations that were made today, and you also get a video recording of this segment. So we'll keep it for history and for those who couldn't make it. Thank you all. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. And have a
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ekenem.
Senator Abdullahi, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Your Excellency, my governor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ezra.
Your Excellency, Ahuta Lafia.
Well done. Nice comments. Distinguished Senator, well done.
Thank you, sir. Ahuta Lafia.
Your Excellency, have a good evening, sir. This is Matthew.
Thank you. Thank you. Good day, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Distinguished Senator Abdullahi Sabio from IFPRI, thank you very much for coming, IFPRI and SSP.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. IFPRI is doing well. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.